The silence before the truth. Keanu Reeves sat quietly in his apartment, staring at the small envelope on the table. The night before, Sandra Bullock had invited him to her birthday gathering. It was supposed to be simple, just close friends, laughter, and cake. But when the moment came for gifts, Sandra had handed him a package wrapped in silver paper, her eyes shining with a strange mixture of warmth and tension. Inside, there had been something so unexpected, so personal, that Keanu could not even find words. And now, in the silence of his home, he kept replaying that moment in his mind, wondering why the gift had left him shaken, that the evening had started like any other celebration. Sandra had filled the room with light, her laughter carrying across the space, making everyone feel at ease. Keanu had arrived quietly, as he always did, humble and calm. The guests had cheered when they saw him, but he had only offered his shy smile and sat near the corner. He never liked too much attention, but Sandra had pulled him forward, insisting that tonight he was part of the family. He had agreed because he respected her deeply. They had shared years of friendship, moments of support, and even silent understandings that only close friends could carry. But as the night moved on, the tension grew. Keanu had noticed Sandra glancing at a small silver-wrapped box on the table again and again. She laughed with her friends, but her eyes often returned to that package. When the time for gifts arrived, people offered her flowers, jewelry, and heartfelt words. Sandra had accepted them all with gratitude, but when she finally picked up that silver box and turned toward Keanu, the room had gone strangely quiet. Her voice trembled when she said, "This one is for you." The entire gathering had fallen into a hush. Waiting. Keanu had felt the weight of that silence pressing against him. His hands had taken the box, and he had slowly unwrapped it, every layer of paper making the air thicker. When the lid opened, his breath had caught. What he saw inside was not luxury, not something expensive. It was something much more powerful, something tied to a memory he had hidden deep within his heart. The moment was so overwhelming that he could not even thank her properly. He had only managed a faint smile, but inside, his heart had begun to race with emotions he could not explain. After the party, he had returned home carrying the envelope that Sandra had quietly slipped into his hand after the gift. She had leaned closer and whispered, "Open it when you are ready. The truth is inside." Her words had echoed in his ears all night, and now, as he sat in his apartment staring at the envelope, he felt both fear and curiosity. He had been through pain before. He had carried losses that never healed, but this was different. This was personal, and it connected him to a part of himself he rarely allowed anyone to touch. Keanu reached out and touched the envelope with his fingers, but he did not open it yet. He thought about Sandra, about her steady support through the years, about the times when they had been each other's anchor in storms of life. She was more than a friend. She was a soul who understood him without judgment. But what truth could she be holding back now? Why did her eyes look so heavy? When she handed it to him, there was kindness, yes, but there was also sorrow, as if she carried a secret that could change everything. Suddenly, a soft knock came at his door. Keanu stood, his heart quickening. It was late, far too late for visitors. When he opened the door, he found Ana de Armas standing there, her face pale, her eyes filled with something urgent. She held no smile, no trace of the playful charm she often carried. Instead, she whispered, "Keanu, we need to talk. It is about the gift." Keanu's chest tightened. Anna's words carried a weight he was not ready for. He stepped aside, letting her in, knowing that whatever she was about to reveal would not be simple. As she walked past him, the envelope still lay untouched on the table, its presence like a silent shadow between them. Keanu realized in that moment that the night was only beginning, and the truth waiting for him might change everything. He thought he knew about Sandra, about himself, and about the bond they shared. Asterisk. The truth begins to unfold. Ana de Armas sat, down on the couch, her hands trembling slightly as she held a small notebook against her chest. Keanu closed the door quietly, his mind running in circles. The silver envelope still lay untouched on the table, almost glowing in the dim light of the apartment. The air felt heavy, as if every object in the room carried the weight of secrets. Keanu sat across from Ana, his dark eyes searching her face for answers. He had known her as a friend, as someone with kindness and openness, but tonight her expression carried something different. There was urgency in her and perhaps even fear. Ana took a deep breath, her voice soft but firm. Keanu, I know you found Sandra's gift strange, and I know you haven't opened the envelope yet, but before you do, you need to hear something from me. The gift wasn't only from Sandra. It was from both of us, and the truth inside that envelope could break you if you're not ready. Keanu leaned back, his heart pounding harder. He had spent years mastering the art of calmness, of facing storms without showing the waves inside him. But tonight, his chest burned with questions he could not hold back. Ana, he whispered, what is this about? Why do you both look at me with so much sorrow? I don't understand. Ana lowered her gaze, gripping the notebook tightly. It is about your past, Keanu. About a chapter you thought was closed. Forever. Sandra wanted to tell you at her birthday because she felt you deserved the truth no matter how painful it might be. And I agreed, because carrying secrets this heavy only builds more silence between people who care for each other. Her words cut through him like glass. The past. His past was filled with shadows he rarely allowed anyone to touch. He had lived through loss, heartbreak, and loneliness that most people could not imagine. But what could Sandra and Ana know that he himself did not already carry? His palms grew cold as he tried to prepare himself, but nothing could truly prepare him for truths that were hidden deliberately. Ana opened the notebook slowly and placed it on the table, right beside the envelope. Inside this notebook are letters, she said. Letters written years ago but never delivered to you. Sandra found them first, and then she told me. We both agreed you had to see them, but we were afraid of how you might react. So Sandra decided to give you the gift as a bridge, and this notebook explains everything. Keanu's throat tightened. He stared at the notebook, then at the envelope, both lying side by side, as if two doors stood before him, each one leading to truths he had not asked for. Who wrote these letters? He asked, his voice breaking slightly. Ana lifted her eyes to meet his. Someone you once loved. Someone who carried feelings for you even in silence. But life kept those words away from you. And now, years later, the letters have found their way back. A sharp pain pressed against Keanu's chest. He thought of the faces from his past, of the people he had loved and lost. Memories flooded him, some too painful to revisit. He shook his head slowly. Why now? Why after all these years? Ana's voice grew softer, almost a whisper. Because Sandra believes that healing doesn't come from forgetting, it comes from facing the truth. And because these letters, they don't only hold sorrow, they hold kindness, love, and something you need to hear to move forward. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with emotions unspoken. Keanu's eyes fell on the envelope again. He remembered Sandra's trembling hands when she gave it to him, and now he understood why. She had carried this secret for too long, waiting for the right moment to set it free. Ana leaned forward, her eyes wet but steady. Keanu, I know how much pain you've carried. I've seen the way you smile for the world while hiding storms inside. But I promise you, what's inside the envelope and this notebook is not meant to destroy you. It is meant to remind you of something important, something you may have forgotten about yourself. Keanu closed his eyes for a moment, breathing slowly, fighting the wave of emotions rising inside him. When he opened them again, his hands reached toward the envelope at last. His fingers brushed against the paper, and in that small movement, the entire room seemed to tighten with suspense. Anna watched him closely, her own breath caught in her chest. "Before you open it," she whispered, "promise me one thing. Whatever you find, whatever truth comes out, don't let it harden your heart. Let it guide you instead. Sandra and I only want you to see the part of yourself that you've kept hidden for too long." Keanu nodded faintly, though doubt and fear clouded his mind. With slow movements, he tore open the envelope. Inside was a single photograph, old and slightly faded, but still clear. The sight of it made his body freeze, his lips parting in silent shock. In the photograph, he saw himself standing beside someone he never expected to see again. Someone whose memory he thought had vanished into the distance of time. Anna's voice trembled as she said, "Keanu, this is where the truth begins." The photograph speaks. Keanu's hands shook as he stared at the old photograph. The edges were worn, as if time itself had tried to erase it, but the image still held power. He saw himself, much younger, standing beside a woman whose smile carried warmth and sorrow at the same time. Her eyes seemed alive yet fragile, as if they hid emotions too heavy for words. Keanu's breath slowed, his chest tightening. He whispered her name under his breath, almost afraid to say it aloud. The sound of her name in the quiet room broke something inside him, as if a locked door had just been forced open. Anna watched him carefully, her own eyes shimmering with emotion. "You remember her, don't you?" she asked softly. Keanu nodded, slowly, his gaze fixed on the photograph. "How could I forget?" he whispered. She was everything for a moment in time, and then she was gone." The memory rushed back to him like a storm. He remembered the laughter they once shared, the late-night conversations that felt endless, the way she believed in him when the world felt heavy on his shoulders. But he also remembered the distance that grew, the silence that followed, and finally, the painful day when she left without a goodbye. He had carried that wound for years, burying it under layers of calmness and humility, convincing himself that forgetting was the only way to survive. But now, with the photograph in his hand, the past returned like a ghost that refused to stay silent. Keanu placed the photo gently on the table and turned toward Anna. "Where did this come from?" he asked, his voice trembling. Anna hesitated before answering. "It came with the letters," she said. "She wrote them in the last years of her life. Sandra discovered them by chance, and she knew they belonged to you. She kept them safe until now. But she believed the right time to give them was when you could face the truth without breaking apart." Keanu's heart skipped. "The last years of her life?" he repeated, his voice barely a whisper. "She's gone?" Anna nodded gently, pain shadowing her face. "Yes. She passed away quietly, far from the spotlight, far from everyone she once knew. But before she left this world, she poured her heart into those letters. She wrote about you, about the love she never stopped carrying, and about the regrets she wished she could erase." Keanu leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees, his face buried in his hands. The room was silent except for the sound of his breathing, heavy and uneven. He had lived with grief before. He had lost people he loved deeply, but this was different. This was not only loss, it was the realization that words meant for him had been trapped in silence for years, waiting for this moment. Anna reached out carefully and touched his shoulder. "She never hated you," she said. "She never wanted to leave you in pain. Life simply pulled her away, and she thought you would be better without her. But the letters show the truth. She always carried you in her heart. Keanu lifted his head slowly, his eyes wet but burning with something new. I don't know if I can read them, he admitted. What if they break me even more? Anna shook her head gently. They won't break you, Keanu. They will remind you of the strength you already carry. They will remind you of love, of kindness, of resilience. You always put others before yourself, but you never give yourself permission to heal. Maybe this is the way life is giving you that chance. He looked again at the photograph. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to remember not just the pain of losing her, but also the beauty of having known her. Her laughter, her gentle words, her way of seeing the good in him when he could not see it himself. He felt a warmth inside his chest, mixed with sorrow, but also with gratitude. Keanu reached for the notebook slowly, his fingers brushing against the cover. The weight of it seemed heavier than the paper it carried, as if the voices of the past were waiting to speak. Anna watched silently, knowing that once he opened it, nothing would ever be the same again. With trembling hands, Keanu opened the notebook. The first page carried handwriting he knew instantly. Even after all the years, he recognized the curves of her letters, the way she wrote his name with such care. The words blurred as his eyes filled with tears, but he forced himself to read. Dear Keanu, the letter began, I don't know if you will ever see these words, but if you do, I want you to know I never stopped believing in you. Even when life pulled me away, even when silence became our only language, I carried you with me. I saw the way you walked through pain with dignity, the way you gave kindness when the world gave you none. I loved you then, and I love you still, and I hope one day these words reach you so you will know you were never forgotten. Keanu closed his eyes, pressing the page against his chest. The letter felt like a voice calling out from beyond time, reaching into his heart, and for the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry without shame, his tears falling freely, carrying both pain and healing. Anna's own eyes filled with tears as she whispered, She wanted you to know this truth. Sandra and I only helped. Bring it to you. But the words, they are hers, and they belong to you now. Keanu nodded slowly, his hands shaking as he turned the page, ready to face what else was written. He knew this was only the beginning, and that the truth would come piece by piece, like fragments of a life he thought was lost forever. The weight of the letters. The night stretched long and heavy as Keanu sat with the notebook open on his lap. Each page carried a voice that felt alive, as if the woman he once loved had returned through ink and paper. The handwriting, soft and uneven at times, carried traces of her heart. Some words were steady, filled with strength, while others trembled, as though written through tears. Keanu felt every emotion pressed into the pages, and with each letter his own heart seemed to ache and heal at the same time. Anna remained silent, watching him with quiet respect. She knew this was not the kind of pain that needed answers. This was the kind of pain that needed space, and so she gave it to him. The room was filled only with the sound of Keanu turning pages and the occasional deep breath he took to steady himself. In one letter, she wrote about the day she first met him, how his quiet presence had spoken louder than any words. She described how he carried a light inside him, even when he did not believe it himself. In another, she wrote about regret, the regret of walking away, the regret of thinking silence would protect him, when in truth it only left wounds unspoken. Keanu's chest tightened as he reached a letter dated near the end of her life. Words were shaky, the ink lighter, but the message cut deep. Dear Keanu, if these words ever reach you, I want you to remember one thing. You have given more to this world than it ever gave you. Don't let sorrow steal the kindness that makes you who you are. You once told me that pain shapes us, but I believe love saves us. So let love save you, even if I can't be there to remind you anymore. Keanu closed the notebook, his eyes wet, his hands trembling. His entire body felt heavy, as if he carried the weight of years in that single moment. He whispered softly, almost to himself, "Why did I never get these letters before? Why were they hidden from me for so long?" Anna lowered her gaze, her voice quiet. "That is the part of the truth Sandra wanted you to hear from her. She kept these letters safe because she believed the timing had to be right. She believed that if you had read them too soon, when your grief was raw, they might have broken you. But now, she thought you were strong enough to face them, to carry them without losing yourself." Keanu shook his head slowly. "But who gave her these letters? How did they even survive all these years?" Anna hesitated, her lips pressed tight as if she was weighing her words. They came from someone close to her in those final years, someone who promised to deliver them but never did. Sandra discovered them by accident, and once she realized what they were, she made a choice. She decided to protect them until she was sure you were ready. Keanu frowned, his mind restless. "A choice," he repeated. "She chose for me. She chose what I should know and when. But why? Why not trust me to face my own pain?" His words were not angry, but they carried a deep hurt. For a man who valued honesty and loyalty, the idea that truths were hidden from him cut deep. Anna leaned forward gently, her eyes soft. "Sandra wasn't trying to control you, Keanu. She was trying to protect you. Maybe she made the wrong choice. Maybe she made the right one. But she did it because she cared. Because she couldn't stand the thought of you drowning in even more sorrow when you already carried so much." Keanu leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, his heart torn between gratitude and confusion. He respected Sandra deeply, but the thought of her holding back such an important truth left him unsettled. Yet at the same time, he remembered her trembling hands, her heavy eyes, and he knew she had not taken the decision lightly. Dada's silence filled the room. Anna finally spoke again, her voice steadier now. "There is something else, Keanu. Something Sandra wanted me to tell you, not through a letter, but directly. Because it is connected to the gift she gave you. The notebook and the envelope are only part of the truth. There is more. Something about why she held on to them all this time." Keanu turned his gaze toward her, his eyes sharp, his chest rising and falling slowly. "What more could there be?" he asked. Anna hesitated, then reached into her bag. From it, she pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn and fragile. She placed it carefully on the table. "This," she whispered, "is the letter Sandra never wanted you to see until she believed the moment was right. It's not from the woman in the photograph. It's from Sandra herself." Keanu's breath caught. He stared at the folded paper, knowing that opening it would not only bring more truth, but also force him to question the foundation of trust he had built with Sandra. His hands hovered above it, trembling with the weight of choice. Anna leaned closer and whispered, "Keanu, this is the part of the story that may change how you see everything." Sandra's hidden letter. Keanu's fingers trembled as they touched the folded paper on the table. It was different from the notebook, different from the old photograph. This was not a voice from the past reaching out through distance and time. This was Sandra's voice, here and now, carrying the truth she had hidden from him until this very moment. The air in the room felt heavy, as if the walls themselves were waiting for him to open it. Anna sat silently across from him, her hands pressed together, her eyes filled with both worry and trust. With slow movements, Keanu unfolded the fragile paper. His heart pounded as the words revealed themselves. The handwriting was familiar, neat, but carrying a subtle shake, as though Sandra had written it with the weight of her own conflict. Keanu read the first line aloud, his voice breaking as it carried through the stillness of the room. "Dear Keanu, if you are reading this, then it means I finally found the courage to share the truth with you. please know that I have never hidden these words to harm you. I have hidden them because I love you as my friend, my family, and my anchor in a world that is often too heavy." Keanu paused, his eyes wet. The word love hung in the air. Not romantic, but profound, born of years of trust and silent understanding. He read on. "Years ago, when I found the letters meant for you, I did not know what to do. I feared giving them to you too soon would only reopen wounds you had barely managed to close. I feared watching you fall into silence again, the kind of silence that eats away at your spirit. So I kept them, guarding them like fragile glass, waiting for a time when I believed you could face them with strength instead of despair. Perhaps I waited too long. Perhaps I made the wrong choice, but I could not carry them any longer. They belong to you, as does the truth that comes with them." Keanu stopped again, his chest rising with heavy breaths. The letter continued, but already he felt the weight of Sandra's struggle. She had carried this choice for years. Torn between protecting him and trusting him, he read further. "There is another reason I held back. The woman who wrote those letters, she reached out to me once before she passed. She asked me to keep her words safe, and she made me promise that I would give them to you only when you were ready. I honored her request, even though it broke my heart to see you live without knowing. I wanted to tell you so many times, but every time I looked at you, I saw the pain you already carried, and I told myself it was not the right moment." Keanu's voice broke on the last line, and he lowered the paper, staring at the table in silence. He could feel Sandra's presence in the words, her loyalty, her respect, but also the sorrow of a friend who had been forced to choose between two kinds of pain. Anna leaned forward gently, her voice low. "She never meant to betray you, Keanu. She only wanted to protect you, even if it meant holding a truth that was not hers to keep. It hurt her too. I saw it in her eyes many times." Keanu nodded slowly, tears slipping down his face. "I know," he whispered. "I know Sandra would never do anything to hurt me, but it still hurts to realize she carried this without telling me. It feels like a part of my life was kept in shadows, even by someone I trust with everything." Anna reached out, placing her hand softly over his. "Sometimes love makes people make impossible choices." She chose silence, not because she doubted you, but because she could not bear to see you broken again. And now, by giving you this, she has trusted you with the truth at last. Keanu lifted the letter again, finishing the final lines. "Keanu, I know this will change you. I hope it changes you for the better, not the worse. I hope it reminds you that love never really leaves us. It only transforms. You have been my greatest friend, my greatest example of humility, and my proof that kindness still lives in this world. Please forgive me if I made mistakes by holding this from you. I did it because I believed in your heart, even more than you believed in your own. Always, Sandra." Keanu lowered the paper slowly, his eyes lost in thought. He could almost hear her voice speaking the words, filled with warmth, honesty, and quiet strength. It was not betrayal. It was protection. But protection often came with scars, and now he had to decide whether to carry this truth as a wound or as a gift. Anna broke the silence carefully. "Keanu, there is still one thing left. Sandra asked me to give you something else tonight, something she said would bring all of this together. I was waiting until you finished her letter." Keanu turned toward her, his body tense, his heart not sure how much more it could hold. "What is it?" he asked. Anna reached into her bag again, her hands shaking slightly. This time she pulled out a small wooden box, simple and unmarked. She placed it on the table between them, her eyes never leaving his. "She told me this. Box holds the last piece of the story," Anna whispered. "And she said only you can open it." Keanu stared at the box, his chest tightening. After all the letters, after the photograph, after Sandra's confession, Now there was something more. His fingers hovered above the lid, knowing that whatever was inside could change everything again. Asterisk. The wooden box, Keanu's hand lingered on the wooden box, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and curiosity. It was not large, just big enough to hold something personal, something meant for only one pair of eyes. The wood was smooth but old, carrying the faint scent of time. It looked ordinary, yet he knew it was not. Ordinary things did not carry such weight. Ordinary things did not silence a room the way this small box did. Anna's eyes followed his hand, her expression tense, almost as if she already knew what waited inside but could not bring herself to say it aloud. Slowly, Keanu lifted the lid. The hinges creaked faintly, the sound echoing like a whisper of the past. Inside, there was no jewelry, no expensive gift, nothing that glittered. Instead, there were 3 items, each simple but powerful in meaning. The first was a folded letter sealed in wax. The second was a pressed flower, delicate and faded, still holding a trace of its color. The third was a ring, plain and silver, without decoration but carrying an undeniable presence. Keanu froze, his eyes fixed on the ring. His hand trembled as he picked it up, his breath catching in his throat. Memories returned with sudden force. The woman in the photograph, the one whose letters now filled his notebook. He remembered the day they had walked together near a small field where she had picked a flower and laughed, saying she wanted to keep it forever. He remembered the way she had once held this very ring, slipping it onto her finger in a moment of quiet joy. His voice was barely a whisper. This was hers. Anna nodded slowly. Yes, it was hers. She left it behind with the letters, asking that it be returned to you one day. She wanted you to have it, not as a chain to the past, but as a reminder of love that shaped you, even in silence. Keanu's hand closed gently around the ring, his eyes filling with tears. Why didn't she give it to me herself? Why leave me with nothing but questions for all these years? Anna's gaze softened. Because she thought she had no right to step back into your life when she was already leaving this world. She believed the pain would only grow heavier for you if she came back just to disappear again. So she chose silence. And she left these pieces behind, hoping they would one day remind you not of the loss, but of the love you gave and received. Keanu placed the ring carefully on the table, his heart torn between sorrow and gratitude. Then his hand moved to the folded letter sealed in wax. He broke the seal slowly, the paper unfolding like a final voice from the past. His eyes moved across the words, and the room seemed to fade until there was nothing but the letter and his, heart beating heavily in his chest. My dearest Keanu, if this reaches you, it means I am gone, and yet I live through the memories we shared. I want you to know that I never walked away because I stopped loving you. I walked away because I feared my illness would burden you, and I could not bear to see your kindness weighed down by my fading days. I chose silence not because I wanted to leave you alone, but because I wanted you to keep moving forward without carrying my suffering. Please forgive me. I always believed you deserved happiness, even if it could not be with me. This ring, this flower, these letters, they are all that remains of what we shared. But my hope is that they remind you of the strength in love, the strength in resilience, and the truth that you were, and always will be, deeply loved. Keanu's lips trembled as he finished the letter, his tears falling freely. He pressed the paper against his chest, holding it as if it were her voice, her touch, her memory, all wrapped into one. He had lived with the pain of unanswered questions, the silence of love lost without reason. Now, at last, the silence had broken, and though the truth hurt, it also healed. Anna's own eyes were wet, her voice gentle but firm. This is why Sandra wanted you to know, not to reopen the wounds, but to show you that even in her silence, she loved you. She believed in you. And Sandra believed that carrying this truth would free you, not break you. Keanu placed the letter back into the box carefully, alongside the flower and the ring. He closed the lid slowly, his breathing steadying. For the first time in years, he felt something shift inside him. Not the erasing of pain, but the acceptance of it. He understood now that love was not gone. It lived in memories, in gestures, in the simple act of someone writing words meant for him even as their own life was fading. But just as the silence began to settle, Anna spoke again, her voice carrying a new weight. "There's something you still don't know, Keanu. Something Sandra wanted to tell you herself, but she wasn't ready yet. I promised her I would say it if the moment ever came." Keanu turned toward her, his body tense again, his heart tightening. "What is it?" he asked. Anna looked down for a moment, gathering her courage. Then she lifted her eyes, her voice steady, though her hands trembled. "The woman who wrote those letters. She wasn't just someone from your past. She was someone connected to Sandra, too. She was part of her life in ways you never knew. And that connection changes everything." The final truth. The room felt colder after Anna's words. Keanu sat frozen, his breath caught, his thoughts racing. All along he had believed the story was about a woman he once loved, about the letters, the photograph, the ring, and the silence she left behind. But now, Anna's voice carried a weight that told him the story was bigger, tied not only to his past, but to Sandra as well. Anna clasped her hands together, her eyes lowering for a moment before she met his gaze. "The woman who wrote those letters," she said slowly, "was not just your love. She was Sandra's sister." Keanu's body tensed, the words hitting him like a wave. His lips parted, but no sound came. For a moment, the silence was unbearable. Finally, he whispered, "Her sister?" Anna nodded gently. "Yes, Sandra never told you because she didn't want your friendship with her to be defined by that connection. She wanted to keep the bond you two had pure, without the shadow of her sister's memory hanging over it. But when she found the letters, she knew she couldn't hide it forever. She knew you deserved to know the whole truth." Keanu leaned back slowly, his hand covering his face. Images flooded his mind. The photograph, the letters, the ring. And now they connected with Sandra, in a way he had never imagined. All those years of friendship, of loyalty, of quiet understanding. She had carried not only her own heart, but also the memory of her sister, the woman who had loved him in silence until her final days. Anna's voice grew softer. "Sandra protected you, yes. But she also protected her sister's memory. She didn't want you to see her only as the sibling of someone you had lost. She wanted you to see her for who she was, your friend, your anchor, your family. And she was terrified that, if you knew the connection, everything between you would feel different." Keanu lowered his hand slowly, his eyes filled with tears, but not of anger. His chest ached with sorrow, but also with an understanding that began to bloom. "All this time," he whispered, "Sandra carried this for both of us. She carried her sister's silence, her words, her memory, and she still stood beside me as my friend, never once asking for anything in return." Anna nodded. "Yes, that is who she is. Strong, humble, and willing to carry pain if it means sparing others. But she wanted you to know the truth now because she believed you were ready, not just to handle it, but to honor it." Keanu's gaze fell on the wooden box once more. The ring, the flower, the letters. They were no longer just remnants of a lost love. They were a bridge between him and Sandra, between his past and his present. He realized then that the love he once lost had never truly vanished. It had lived quietly, through Sandra, through her silent loyalty, through the way she stood beside him without ever letting him feel alone. For a long moment, Keanu sat in silence, his heart heavy but alive with understanding. Then, with a slow breath, he spoke. I can't change the past. I can't erase the silence or the pain, but I can choose what to carry from here. And what I carry now is not just loss, it is love, in all the ways it survived. Anna smiled softly through her own tears. That's what Sandra hoped you would say. She wanted you to see not the weight of the truth, but the gift hidden inside it. A gift of resilience, kindness, and love that never truly ends. Keanu stood holding the box close to his chest. He walked to the window, staring out at the quiet city below. The night was calm, the streets lit softly, the world moving forward. For the first time in years, he felt he could move forward too. Not by forgetting, but by carrying the truth with dignity, as he had carried every storm before Dot. When he turned back to Anna, his voice was steady. Thank you for helping Sandra, for bringing this to me, for being brave enough to face this night with me. Anna shook her head gently. It wasn't bravery, Keanu. It was respect. You deserve the truth, and now you deserve peace. Keanu nodded, his heart lighter though his eyes still carried tears. He placed the box back on the table, resting his hand on it one last time. Then let this be the end of silence, he said quietly. From now on, let it be about love, about kindness, about the people who gave everything to keep hope alive. Anna rose from her seat, and together they stood in the quiet room, the weight of the night slowly lifting. It had been a journey through sorrow, but also through resilience, humility, and the unshakable bonds of respect. Dot and as Keanu looked once more at the photograph, the ring, and the letters, he whispered softly, almost like a promise, I will carry this truth not as a wound, but as a gift.